My name's Alina Wright. I'm 29 years old. 4 months ago, my parents handed me a house that most people would have called a liability and told me I should be grateful for it. It happened on a Sunday afternoon at the long oak table where every family decision in our house had always been announced like a verdict. My father, Robert Wright, stood at the head of the table. He's 60, retired from municipal planning, and still speaks like everyone in the room reports to him. My mother, Helen, sat to his right, hands folded, eyes already distant, as if she'd practiced not looking at me. Across from me sat my younger sister, Claire, 2 years younger, perfectly styled, already smiling before anything had been said. Claire has always smiled early. It gives her time to win. "We've decided it's time to help you girls get established," my father said. 2 envelopes slid across the table. Claire reached hers first. Inside was a sleek metal key fob and a printed deed summary, a newly renovated condo near the River District, floor-to-ceiling windows, underground parking, a building I recognized immediately because I'd helped her move furniture into it once, believing she was renting. She gasped, laughed, stood up to hug my mother. "This is real?" she said. My mother laughed with her. "Of course it is, sweetheart." Then I opened mine. A single key, old, brass, the teeth worn down, tied to a faded paper tag with an address written in my father's handwriting. I looked up. "What is this?" My father didn't sit down. He rarely did when he felt in control. "It's a house, out past Ridgewood. Needs work, but you're good with your hands." That was it. No congratulations, no explanation, just, "You're good with your hands." My mother finally looked at me, just briefly, not with guilt, with relief. Claire leaned over and whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear, "At least you got something, Lena." She said it gently, almost kind, the kind of kindness that assumes you won't push back. I folded the paper, slid it into my bag, and said nothing. I didn't know it then, but my father had deliberately chosen the only property still registered under my grandmother's old land records, the one everyone else had ignored for years, the one most likely to break me quietly. The drive took almost an hour, past the last grocery store, past the last gas station, onto a road that narrowed into gravel and silence. The house sat alone at the edge of a tree line, sagging slightly to one side, like it had been waiting too long for someone to care. The roof dipped. 2 windows were boarded with warped plywood. The porch steps were half collapsed. Inside smelled like damp wood and thyme. The floors bowed under my weight. Pipes rattled when I turned the valve, then went silent. No water, no power. I sat on the one porch step that didn't collapse and stared at the key in my palm. I called Daniel Foster, construction attorney, the only person who had ever told me the truth without softening it. We'd known each other since trade school. "How bad?" he asked. "Bad," I said, "but fixable, maybe." A pause. "Do you own it?" he asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Then that's the first thing we figure out, before you lift a hammer." I told him I'd call back. I didn't. That night I sat in my car with a notebook and a calculator. Roof repairs, structural reinforcement, plumbing, electrical. The number at the bottom was higher than anything I'd ever saved. I crossed out line after line and rewrote it as labor. Me. I'm a finish carpenter. Cabinetry, restoration. Wood doesn't intimidate me. It listens if you're patient. My family never called it a career. They called it a phase. The next morning, my sister texted, "Claire, are you really going to live there?" Me. "I am." Claire, "You could sell it, get something easier." Me. "I'll manage." 3 dots appeared, then vanished. An hour later, my mother texted, "Helen, don't sink your savings into that place. Your father knows what he's doing." I didn't reply. I drove to the hardware store and bought lumber. The first week I tore out rotted boards and hauled debris until my arms shook. A neighbor, Margaret, watched from across the fence without speaking. On the third day, she brought me a bottle of water. "That house belonged to your grandmother," she said. "She loved it." That stopped me. I hadn't known that. By week 6, my savings were gone, every dollar embedded in beams, subflooring, and walls that no longer leaned. And then my father showed up. No call, no warning. He walked through the house slowly, touching surfaces, opening cabinets, saying nothing. Finally, "Not bad." Then after a pause I didn't like, "Don't get attached." That's when I understood. This wasn't help. It was a test. And tests in my family were never meant to be passed. The day after my father told me not to get attached, I stopped treating the house like a favor. I treated it like a project with a deadline. I woke up before sunrise and worked until my hands went numb. I rebuilt the porch steps first, not because they were the most urgent, but because I wanted something finished where the house met the world, something solid, something that said this place wasn't collapsing anymore. Margaret watched from her fence again. This time she nodded once. "You're Lorraine's granddaughter," she said. "I can see it now." That night I slept on a mattress on the floor. No heat, one lamp running off an extension cord from a generator I borrowed from Daniel. The house creaked in ways I couldn't yet interpret. I made notes instead of panicking. Cracks tell stories, if you listen. By week 8, the house had a spine again. New joists, level floors, walls that didn't bow when you leaned against them. I posted a few photos online. Nothing dramatic, just before and after shots. Raw wood turning clean, ruin turning intentional. People noticed. Not my family, strangers. A woman messaged asking if I took commissions. A local contractor asked who'd done the cabinetry. I ignored most of it, focused on the house. Then something shifted. I stopped waiting for permission. I filed permits in my own name. I signed every form myself. When the city inspector came through, he addressed me directly, asked questions, took notes, approved the work. Ownership starts with paperwork, not approval. Claire called one afternoon while I was sanding the kitchen counter. "So," she said, voice too casual, "Dad said you're really fixing it up." "I am." A pause. "You know it's still his house, right?" "Is it?" I asked. Another longer pause. "Well, it's complicated." "I'm sure," I said, and hung up. That night Daniel came by. He walked through the house slowly, the way my father had, but his eyes were different. They weren't measuring value, they were measuring truth. "You pulled permits," he said. "Yes." "In your name?" "Yes." "That matters." He stopped at the old fireplace, the one I'd stripped down to original brick. "Your grandmother's house," he said quietly. I turned to him. "You keep saying that like it means something." "It does," he replied, "because I checked the county registry." My stomach tightened. "The land isn't in your father's name," Daniel said. "It's held in a trust." The room went very still. "A trust?" I asked. "Created 12 years ago," he continued. "Your grandmother was the grantor. She never transferred it." "And the beneficiary?" He looked at me. "You." That was the moment the house stopped being a burden and became leverage. I sat down hard on the stairs. "All this time," I said, "they let me believe." "They let themselves believe," Daniel corrected. "Big difference." I thought about my father's tone, his confidence, his certainty. He wasn't sure. He was assuming, and assumption is the weakest kind of authority. Daniel gathered his things. "Don't say anything yet. Let them make the next move." They didn't make me wait long. 2 days later, my mother called. "Lena," she said gently, "we need to talk about the house." I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Of course," I said. "When?" "Soon," she replied, before things get messy. They were already messy. They just didn't know it yet. They chose Sunday afternoon. Of course they did. Sunday was when my parents liked to resolve things, when tempers were supposed to stay polite and voices low, when disagreement could be reframed as concern and control could pass as care. They arrived together, my father's truck first, then my mother's sedan close behind, like reinforcement. Claire wasn't with them. That told me everything. They walked in without waiting to be invited. My father glanced around the living room, the repaired walls, the clean lines, the light coming in through the windows I'd replaced. He frowned. "You've done a lot," he said. "Not good work, not I'm impressed, just a lot." My mother touched the kitchen counter with her fingertips. "This is nicer than we expected," she said, as if the house had surprised her by surviving. I leaned against the doorway. "You said you wanted to talk." My father nodded. "We do." He cleared his throat. "Claire's situation has changed." I waited. "She's ending her lease," she added quickly. "It's not safe for her to stay downtown right now. Prices are unstable. We don't want her stressed." "Of course not." "And?" I asked. My father folded his arms. "So we're reallocating." There was again that word, like we were talking about furniture, not people. "The house makes more sense for Claire. You're adaptable. You always have been." My mother smiled at me, the same smile she used when I was a child and had already lost. "We'll give you some time. A month. That's generous." I pushed myself off the doorway and walked into the center of the room. "Whose house do you think this is?" I asked. My father blinked. "Don't play games." "I'm not." He gestured around him. "This is family property, always has been." "No," I said calmly, "it hasn't." The air shifted. I reached into the folder on the table and slid a single document toward him. He didn't pick it up at first. "What's this?" my mother asked. "The trust deed," I replied. "Recorded, active, not expired." My father finally took it. His eyes scanned the page once, then again. His jaw tightened. "This isn't," he started. "It is," I said. "Grandma set it up years ago. She never transferred the land. She named one beneficiary." Silence stretched. My mother sat down slowly. My father looked up at me, color rising in his face. "You went behind our backs." "No," I said. "You stood in front of the truth and assumed it wouldn't move." He pushed the paper away. "This doesn't change anything." "It changes everything." He stood up. "I gave you that house." "I gave you keys," I said. "You didn't give me ownership." My mother's voice trembled. "Lena, this doesn't have to turn ugly." "I agree, which is why I'm being clear." I picked up another folder, permits, receipts, photos. "I rebuilt this house legally. Every improvement is documented. I filed everything in my name as beneficiary." My father stared at the table. "And Claire?" my mother whispered. "She doesn't live here, and she won't." My father's chair scraped back. "If you do this," he said, voice low, dangerous, "you'll tear the family apart." I met his eyes. "You already did. I just stopped pretending it was my fault." He looked at my mother, expecting backup. She didn't look back. They left without another word. No threats, no apologies, just the sound of tires on gravel. That evening, Claire texted me. "Dad says you're being difficult." I didn't reply. I went outside, sat on the porch steps I'd rebuilt, and watched the sun drop behind the trees. The confrontation was over. The consequences hadn't started yet. The fallout didn't explode, it seeped. By Monday morning, the calls started, not from my parents, not from Claire, from relatives who hadn't spoken to me in years but suddenly felt invested in my decisions. My aunt first, careful voice, concerned tone. "You know your father's devastated," she said. "He just wants what's best for everyone." I thanked her for calling and ended it there. My cousin tried next, less subtle. "You really going to let this tear the family apart over a house?" I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I'd learned something important over the years. Explanations invite negotiation. Facts don't. By Wednesday, the story had fully mutated. According to my mother, I'd misunderstood the trust. According to my father, I'd been manipulated by lawyers. According to Claire, I'd changed. None of it required my participation to spread. What they didn't have was leverage. My lawyer filed a formal notice that afternoon. Clean, polite, unavoidable. No one was to enter the property without my written consent. No claims of ownership were to be made publicly or privately. Any attempt to interfere would be documented. It wasn't aggressive. It was final. That's when Claire showed up. Not with my parents, alone. She stood at the edge of the driveway like she didn't recognize the place anymore, like the house had crossed some invisible line while she wasn't looking. "You really went through with it," she said. I didn't move. "You knew I would." She laughed once, sharp and brittle. "You were always dramatic." I waited. She stepped closer, looked at the windows, the porch, the details she'd ignored when it was falling apart. "You could have talked to me," she said. "I did, for years. You just didn't hear me." Her jaw tightened. "You think this makes you better than us?" "No," I said. "It makes me done." That landed. She looked away. Her voice dropped. "I don't have anywhere else." I believed her. That didn't change my answer. "I didn't take this house from you. I stopped it from being taken from me." She stared at the ground for a long moment. Then she nodded. Not acceptance, understanding. She left without asking again. The family dinners stopped including my name. The group chat went quiet. Invitations slowed, then vanished. And something else happened too. The house became mine in a way it hadn't before. Not legally, that part was already done. Emotionally. I finished the last repairs without rushing. I planted the garden I'd put off. I hung photos on the walls without worrying who would see them. For the first time, nothing I built felt temporary. The family didn't implode. They reorganized, without me at the center absorbing the pressure. That was the consequence they hadn't planned for, and it changed everything. Silence followed. Not the angry kind, not the kind that waits for an apology, the kind that settles after something irreversible has happened. Weeks passed, then months. The house stopped feeling like a statement and started feeling like a place to live. I woke up without bracing myself. I worked without checking my phone. I slept without replaying conversations that were never going to change. That's when my father called. Not to argue, not to negotiate, to tell me my grandmother had passed. The funeral was small, quiet, no speeches, no performances, just a handful of people standing under a gray sky, pretending they weren't measuring each other's reactions. My parents stood together, but not close. Claire stood apart. I stood where I always had, on my own terms. Afterward, my father approached me alone. He said, "I didn't know about the trust," he said. His voice sounded older than I remembered. I should have. I believed him. that didn't mean it fixed anything. I won't fight you anymore. About the house. About anything. I nodded. That's enough. We didn't hug, we didn't promise to do better. We acknowledged reality. That was progress. Claire never apologized outright. She didn't need to. A month later, she sent me a message. Not about the house, not about the past, just a link to a job posting and a line that read, "Thought this might suit you." It was the first time she'd ever seen me as something other than competition. I didn't reply right away. When I did, I simply said, "Thank you." The house stands solid now. The repairs finished, the walls quiet, the land settled. Sometimes I sit on the porch in the evening and think about how easily all of it could have gone another way, how silence could have kept me small, how compliance would have cost me everything I built. I didn't take anything from my family. I stopped letting them take from me, and that was enough. The story didn't end with revenge. It ended with ownership, not just of a house, of my life.